There are facts that we should all be able to talk about.
They may not see the limit between being kind and being too kind.
But I very much would agree that it comes with risk. Don't leave the waters muddy when, I would even say way before, there's a problem.
If we could be ourselves without having this armor around us, that would be nice.
Over my 35-year career, I've had the opportunity to travel extensively across Europe, working with companies across various industries. I've seen remarkable progress in gender diversity across many roles and levels. There's still some work to do, but the advances have been significant. At the same time, I've heard quite often inappropriate situations towards women in the workplace. And I've even sometimes witnessed boys' club type of dynamics in certain environments or certain companies. I've also mentored around 40 young professionals, mostly women. And what surprises me most, considering we're in the 21st century, is how many of them have experienced some form of inappropriate behaviors. Based on your experience, both as a woman and a leader, where do you think we stand today when it comes to inappropriate behavior and harassment in the workplace towards women?
That's an interesting topic. And in fact, you know, when you talked to me about this podcast, I mean, I was quite surprised when you told me that it was still a hot topic. Because as you say, there were a lot of improvement, especially since the Me Too movement. I mean, men, they know now that they cannot say what they want. They know that the woman can talk about it. They can report the bad behavior. So for me, it was not a hot topic anymore. And then I started to think about it, and I asked around me. And I realized that was still a challenge. And especially, it depends where you work. It depends on your work environment, but also where you study. Because when I discussed with a younger colleague, she said, you know what, it starts at university. And then you get bad habits at the university, and then you continue in the workplace. So for me, it's all about education and awareness. But maybe also, I thought I forget what happened in the past, because I'm older now, and also I think I have the chance to work with companies who don't tolerate bad behaviors. I mean, in my company at Adobe, this is something that we don't accept. We have training every year. I did mine 1 week ago. And it's about harassment, but it's also about inclusion. To avoid harassment, to avoid the stupid jokes or bad comments, we need to educate. We need to understand how to include the woman, and we also need to understand the differences between the cultures, because a French guy will not react the same as a Swedish guy. So I think I've seen a lot of improvement in my 25 years career, but it's not perfect, for sure. And despite all those preventive action, you will always have bad behaviors. I mean, you cannot prevent someone, whatever you say, whatever you explain, you will never prevent someone to have a bad behavior or to say a stupid joke. So I think we need to equip the young ladies, but also the young men, why not, about how to react, how to answer, and how to speak up in case it becomes too difficult.
You know, I think we stand in so many different places. I continue to see a surprising amount of variation. Just when I think we've got something figured out, and we've moved beyond certain issues and, you know, we've got those solved, I go to another country or I go to another part of the country I live in Norway, and I'm taken back 50 years. I find it, I'm a person that's always with hope and focused on solutions. But I must say, after a few decades of going through several of my own experiences, and there have been many, I consider myself extremely fortunate. But I can absolutely look at a past set of experiences, which in some cases things happen which I would have rather been without. So I guess that's my bottom line is, what's it going to take to uniformly bring these different environments, right? Different industry pockets. Why can't women they can have certain roles, but they can't have other roles, right? We see countries like the one I live in, Norway, where most people would rightly, be very, very envious of how good gender diversity is, how the attitudes have evolved pretty amazingly, well and productively around this topic in Norway. Yet, just like in other countries, I think only about 1 in 10 line leadership roles in business is held by a woman. And that's not materially different than many other, at least Western countries, right? So these are things to really scratch your head about.
Looking back on your career, what approaches or strategies worked well for you when facing these issues? And is there anything you will do differently today?
I feel lucky, again, because when I think about it, I realize that I never faced really bad situation. I was never harassed, or I never received a really bad proposal. So, and then, I heard jokes I would have preferred to avoid, or comments that I would have preferred not to hear, but in general, it was okay for me. But then I realized that I built something to protect myself, and that was not only luck. And in fact, I had a kind of a strategy. I would say first, I highly separated my personal life and my professional life. So when I say that, I don't say that I didn't participate to company events. I was there, I was part of the parties, but my personal life was really apart. But you need to have a very good assessment before you go forward with the relationship you can have with your colleagues. Then I never participated to what I call coffee machine rumors. The blah, blah, blah about what happened at the party yesterday, or I was always the last one aware of what was happening. But I didn't care. I didn't want to be part of this. And I think one important one also is to keep control of yourself wherever you are, whatever happened. Because you are at a party, company event, you go for an after-work drink. Sometimes you may forget that you are at work. That's key. You are still at work, whatever happens and wherever you are. That's, for me, very key. And maybe one last is that I always chose, maybe I was lucky again, but I decided to choose the people I would work with. And on that, I followed my instincts, and I always followed I worked with many business partners, I think around 10 in my career, 10 persons who counted. 9 were men, but I chose them. I followed the ones I could rely on. So that was important. And as a conclusion of that protective bubble, I think I put a bubble around me, and I didn't want to give any food for thoughts to anyone regarding my behavior. That was really key. Okay? So that said, there were some moments where I could be in an environment where I heard jokes, I heard comments that, you don't really like about women, about that young lady or whatever. But, and I think there is no common strategy on that. When I was young, sometimes I just ignored what I could hear. When you make a joke, if you see the person in front of you reacting in a way you would like the person to react, you're going to continue. If it goes just above your head, you show you are not impacted, then I think it will stop naturally. Okay? Then if you know more the people and you learn, with the experience, with the age, I think it's important to know how to answer with a quick wit. Okay? You need, sometimes I just joked back. Same tone. You joke with me, I answer back in the same way. You need to know the person quite well if you do that. But sometimes it works. I like it because it's just natural connection with a person. And then, if it becomes too regular and you see that whatever you say, it doesn't work, just talk about it to other people. But I think you learn with the experience. So maybe I was not at ease at the beginning, joking back or saying, come on, guy, what are you saying? Now I can roll my eyes or just kill with my eyes, just looking at you. but that you cannot do it when you are too young. It's difficult. Now, if I reflect on the behavior that I had, the bubble that I built around me, I think it's a bit exhausting sometimes because you want to show you are strong, you are confident, you don't have weaknesses. In this men world, you want to show you are really strong in front of them. So sometimes you just hide your emotions, you hide your real yourself. So in the past years, I think that has changed for me. I realized that I needed to lay down the arms a little bit because, I'm 48. I think nobody is going to annoy me as could have happened in the past. So, but that's something, yes, if we could be ourselves without having this armor around us, that would be nice.
Yeah, so maybe just to refer to a few stories, right, to set the context. I grew up around Chicago, trained as an engineer at the University of Illinois, and started my career in the manufacturing plants of Procter & Gamble in the Midwest. So I then belonged to an environment where there were maybe 2,000 men and a very few, set of women. And I was one of the only young female engineers around, and I was hired into already a kind of a management position. So already in that setting, I had some of the absolute hardest days, of my life in those first 5 years of my career. I experienced some situations where, the technicians would wake up on a Tuesday bored. We'd be going into a big maintenance project on the line, and we would start off with a meeting, and they would agree 5 minutes before the meeting that this was the opportunity. Let's make Kimberly cry this morning. We don't have anything better to do. Okay, so trying really hard to continue to maintain my composure in front of a pretty brutal and totally inappropriate set of behaviors from, 27 men in the room, not very easy. Managed to walk out of there, not crying, by the way, walked to my office as quickly as I could, shut the door, and burst into tears. And I don't think I moved out of that office for 2 hours, calling for lifelines of help. Some of that was par for the course for any manager at the time, but absolutely I feel like I was subjected to a lot of special opportunities, if we say it that way. So those are really learning rich. I developed a tougher skin out of that. I got to exercise truly courageous leadership. I got to test the leaders around me who said, we will support you if you come into a bind, and largely they did. But, so those were some pretty formative first years. Later in my career, so that was about 25 years ago. Later in my career, so maybe about 15 years ago, I was now the general manager of a large German operation. And not an easy thing to do either from the standpoint of the expectations of many that I interacted with. So I would constantly be invited then to attend various different types of settings. Almost always, for example, if they invited 25 business leaders from a certain part of Germany or, from all of Germany, I would almost always be able to count on that I was the only woman in the room. I knew that walking into the room, I kind of had to take that extra moment to compose myself, take a deep breath, put my shoulders back, my chin up, remind myself that I belonged in that room, that I was probably going to get teased a little bit. I might even be asked to pour someone a cup of coffee, that there would be some things which I could react to that I needed to kind of prepare for. Or I would just simply go to a reception after that meeting and well-meaning people would say, hi, nice to meet you, Kimberly, what do you do? And I would say, I'm the Geschäftsführerin of Eli Lilly. And they would say, oh, do you mean you run communications? No, that's not what I said. I said I was running the entire operation for this company with 1,500 people in the country and X amount of revenue. And they would still look at me often and say, do you then do HR? And I got used to having to go to these receptions and something, in Norway, you never introduce yourself with a big lofty title, but I understood pretty quickly in Germany that I needed to rock up and meet people with, half of my CV from the start of the conversation to have some credibility into this. So that was sort of 15 years ago, and I could tell a lot of stories around that. But index forward to today in the country that I live in, Norway, where we've come really, really far on these topics. Look, I have a lot of exposure to industrial settings, more traditional male domain settings, engineering settings in that country as well. And I'll tell you, many of the days I am just so surprised by how the conversations not move forward, mostly on the dimensions of a lack of willingness to acknowledge the biases, the statistics, the real situation that is still so obviously preventing us from treating males and females equally. Obviously, when 1 in 10 women now have had the same level of degrees as the men, opportunity to actively over the years build up their career and take line positions, they don't in strikingly large numbers. So why would that be, right? There are facts that we should all be able to talk about, right? And to do something about. And this kind of sensitivity that we have to enroll people in this, that we have to be very sensitive about talking about it. These things really do surprise me in this day and age. So we have a lot of work to do. What's worked for me as I reflect, I'd say first and foremost, I was, savvy enough to choose environments where a company had really good values. And I always identified leaders in those companies that I trusted and that I felt in times of need, in times of great challenge, I knew where they stood and I trusted that I could go to them. And those are things that I would absolutely encourage women today to think about. There are plenty of environments where you can find yourself that when the going gets tough, or let's say it's tough every day, you simply see that the values of the company are not what you want them to be. You may fight tooth and nail to try to get help, to get an appropriate set of behaviors addressed, and you may be sorely, sorely disappointed. I realize how fortunate I am, and a lot of it, I think, is due down to that fact, And still, I'll tell you, one time in that manufacturing setting, as confident as I was in the leadership around me, after going through a lot of trials and tribulations and having good support, there was an instance where a senior manager that I had, much older than me, much more experienced, many more tools equipped to get results, to handle whatever should come to coach me, decided for reasons I will never know that I was a threat to him. I was an up-and-coming engineer. I had been promoted, and my only take is that this guy felt that I was just a true threat that I was going to take his job, or somehow that I was in some sense threatening or better than him. He put me under so much pressure. He undermined me constantly in meetings for several weeks in a row. And despite the confidence that I had at this point in time, it's still, I scratch my head and I look back and I think, my gosh, my spirit for some months was really, really almost crushed. I started to just not know what I was going to do with this guy. It was so utterly painful, unfair, frustrating, inappropriate. And all the things that I tried to address with him and the direct people around were just failing miserably. And so I'm very thankful in that moment. It was actually a senior leader just in an adjacent business that saw something happening. In fact, what he saw was this meeting he thought was very strange, where Kimberly was put on the spot to answer for a large breakdown that had happened on the piece of equipment. And I was almost silent. And he had never seen Kimberly, me, almost silent in any situation where you're asked to step up to the plate, state your view, right? Talk about the plan, talk about what you know, talk about what you don't know. And I fell into that because I had been through weeks and months then of being attacked and undermined. And I was almost silent. And thank goodness he came to me, reached out to me, and he said, a very strange thing just happened in that meeting, and I'd really appreciate if you could be honest and help me understand what happened. And I burst into tears. And I could tell him all of that which I had been experiencing for those months. And boy, did he address it. Very interesting, though. So, listen, being able to go to a third party when situations get tough, I think is a piece of advice. That is really, really crucial. If things start to get uncomfortable, I really encourage women need to be on their toes. At the first insinuation, at the first small thing, it's really difficult to list it, to call it out, because you're subjecting yourself to, oh, he didn't mean it. Oh, it was a simple joke. Now you're overreacting. So practicing the techniques of how you call things out, I think, is utterly crucial. And those are some learnings that I've had as well. And I still practice today. How, when we see these things happening, if it's in a smaller meeting, maybe if it's in a very tense board situation, how does one put words on, defuse, hold people accountable? If you're being bullied, how do you address a bully? This is still an area where, after all of my years and experiences and all of the coaching and mentoring I've done, I feel like I'm still a student here, right? It's not only easy, even if it is much easier for me than it would be for presumably someone earlier in career.
In professional settings, as in any human interaction in general, there's often a subtle layer of seduction in interpersonal dynamics. This creates a kind of a gray zone in the workplace behavior too. How do you perceive and navigate this complexity?
Yeah, professional or personal, or because I don't know if we can call it seduction, but I mean, in all the interpersonal connections, when you want to create something, a strong relationship with someone, you want to give the best of yourself. You want to show up, in the best way. You're going to be kind, you're going to smile. It happens in many circumstances. You go for an interview. I'm not saying that you're going to seduce the interviewer, but you want to show that you are the best one. If you want to sell something to a customer, it's the same. You create something between you and the person in front of you. So in the workplace, I would call it, yes, the gray zone. I like this word because I think this is the perfect word. And it's all about emotional intelligence. I think this word is used a lot, but this is key in the workplace. If you want to create connection, team spirit, this emotional intelligence is very important to be successful. And I think when you are young, this may not be your best attribute. This is something you can have naturally, but I think you develop it when you get older, okay? And for the young people, when they start their career, they may not see this gray zone. They may not see the limit between being kind and being too kind. And sometimes, you know, the FOMO, the fear of missing out, you want to be included, you want to be nice, then you're going to listen to other people's problems, you're going to take to the coffee machine, see that you are interested by the other person, but then the other person in front of you, if it's a man, he may misinterpret what you're saying, how you behave. You feel interested by me. Maybe it's more than just professional. So on that side, I think it's important to understand that men and women are different. But we are different. We don't perceive the things the same way. And I discuss with men friends, and I can tell you that sometimes men, they're afraid of what they are going to say. Sometimes they can I say a compliment? Is it all right? Is it not? I have some friends who just keep the door open when they have a one-on-one with a lady. I think most of them are respectful, but as women, we also have a responsibility on how we behave and be aware of the impact we can have on the men. And if we see that we are beyond the gray zone, then we should take a step back. And one of my tips, when I see that, because it happened to me, generally I talk about my husband, and I talk about my kids. I talk about my personal life that is super, and I don't need anything else to add to that. Generally, it helps stop the discussion.
I like this recognition that between men and women, or between men and women, between humans, there is this element of seduction in the conversation. And to be likable and to be even charming in the workplace, in male-female relationships, it's also a positive thing. It's an opportunity. But I very much would agree that it comes with risk. And so, you know, what I would strongly recommend, and what I've practiced with good effect through my career, is, you know, being really clear, if you will, positive, upbeat, clear, light-footed even, about you're here to do a job. I see you as a professional and you see me as a professional. And this is fun, and even the happy hour we had last night was great. And if things got a little, you're not quite so comfortable, be quick in that way to return the conversation to, you know, I'm so glad that I have you as a colleague here. You know, we wouldn't want anything to interrupt we wouldn't want anything to interrupt our good interactions here. We're both here to do a job. Thank you for the respect you give me. I give you the same. I'm so glad I have this solid relationship with you, my coworker. Lots of positiveness, lots of signals. Don't leave the waters muddy when, I would even say way before there's a problem. I actually find it really fascinating because I've been asked this many times, when I reflect on, you know, I've had great experiences, relationships. There's a social component in every job I've ever done, in many of the relationships. But I think that's carried me extremely well through my career. Well, because Kimberly, your body language ultimately is pretty clear. Your posture is pretty professional. Yeah, on those moments where things could have gotten a little bit gray, we saw you clarify. You sent a signal which was not to be reckoned with. You know, there was not an invitation. There was clarity about what you were not invited to. So I champion that approach.
What are the 2-3 key pieces of advice you would give to a young woman entering the corporate world when it comes to setting boundaries and protecting herself in these situations?
I think some of them we talked about. This is the way I protected myself. So I would say the first one is don't mix too much personal and professional life. Just don't be the boring girl, because I mean, I don't say that you should be, okay, go to work and go back home and not participate. That's not my point. Just be aware that it's two different things. Then the second advice I would give is don't give the feeling that there is an open door. If you don't want to open the door, just close it and show that the door is closed. As we said, this is this gray zone that you need to manage. So if you see something weird, just reclose the door, okay? Then we said at the beginning that be professional, very important. Control yourself. Be careful of alcohol, be careful on how you behave in parties. Just stay professional in all cases. And then the last one is really, sometimes you're going to react. The best is, if you have an issue, to know how to answer, to know how to react. But if there is really something bad happening to you, speak up. Don't stay with your fear, don't stay alone. So I'm not saying that you should just go to your HR directly, but talk to your manager, talk to a colleague, whatever, it can be a woman, it can be a man. And if it doesn't help, then just go to HR. I think companies today, most of them, they don't tolerate anymore those behaviors. So they should take an action to help you. And if they don't, don't stay. I wouldn't stay in a company which doesn't protect me. So at least speak up.
Choose your employer wisely. Choose your employer wisely. I think, we should be expecting companies to walk the talk around their values. And we should be doing our research before we decide to involve ourselves in situations. There's a lot of great information out there, right? You can talk to people who have gone before you, who have worked in a certain company. Pay attention to signals and bad stories and try to understand if it was a situational moment or if it's something deeper about the values of the company. Make sure that if you're going to join a workforce, join a team, agree to be part of something, I think be proactive and on the lookout for, do I have people that I could trust in a bind here? Do I have people that would back me up? Because unfortunately, I think the statistics probably still support you may just need them. Chances that everything is going to go smooth and easy and you're not going to come into any awkwardness or worse, pretty low. So being proactive, being wise, that's probably my first and most important recommendation. Another thing I would recommend is engage and enjoy in the full spectrum of workplace interactions, right? But be very clear that you're a professional and you expect to be dealing with professionals, and proactive, crisp, clear, positive, light-footed, I like to say. It's that I think will serve people well. So if something starts to happen, it's far better to put a name on it while you can still make kind of a easy flowing humor about it, while you can still address it, right? Look somebody in the eye, return things to a professional level, moving on, right? Take the risk. It might feel weird. You might not think you read the right signal, but take the risk, right? And there's lots of great ways to do that. You don't have to put yourself in a horrible position to do just that. So have the discipline to take the risks to address things when they're small. I think that's really, really key too. Surprisingly, I would also like to give advice. If a woman and a man find themselves in the workplace in a situation which is beginning to involve a romantic interaction, you need to do something about this pretty quickly, particularly if there's a power level difference involved. And maybe it's surprising too. I think about a lot of people find their partner in the workplace, right? So that piece isn't surprising that interactions develop. But I can tell you, I've been party to so many situations where this has gone really, really wrong. I've had people reporting to me who had people reporting to them that they got involved in affairs with, tried to keep it secret. At a certain point in time, which happens very quickly, if you're the boss and you're having a relationship with someone on your team, that is grounds to lose your job. and it is certainly grounds to lose your reputation. So this kind of thing, particularly in these different power levels, has to be addressed very early on. So if two people at the same level begin to get involved on a team, I still recommend, even if it's super awkward, find somebody you trust, go to HR, ask them not to say anything. It's something to be celebrated that two people, usually if they don't have other connections or, if the situation is mutual and it's okay and no one's getting hurt, this is wonderful. But you do need to be open with the team manager or someone. You do need to signal. And then at a certain point, if you are moving into a more serious relationship, somebody needs to move off that team.